Hey artists and creators, Jstar here, and today I want to show you how I use regular stamp pad ink and stencils to create some great backgrounds that inspire beautiful cards. Okay, so I'm going to start off with this is a piece of craft cardstock, and I've got some stencils here that I found on Temu. Love the Temu, and it's very simple. Let's actually turn this sideways, and I'm going to do a couple things on this. So I just want to see some different. So I want to tape it down, just because with stencils they can move around, and that is a pain to try to get them back in order. So I've got a makeup sponge that I got from the Dollar Tree. They are $1.25 each, but it's very useful because it has that little point, and I can sort of keep the ink off my fingers. But I'm just going to dab it into some black ink, and then I'm going to pounce it all over this, and then I'm going to start to rub it into the openings. Okay, wow, I really don't see anything coming through on this, but let's trust it and see what happens. So, oh, my whole table's shaking. Okay, so let's see what we ended up with. Ah, see, very nice. Okay, and then that is perfect background to use for an altered playing card, that size. You know, it doesn't take much, or it can just be a bit of scrap for collages. Let's try another one with just a bigger opening, just to see. I'll put that down, and I'll just tape it a couple places to hold it. Dab, and then just run through it. Now I can see this is getting down there, and with one pass it's kind of light, but you can darken it. And I'm going to go even darker right in that center. Okay, so let's see what we got. Oh yeah, very cool. Okay, now if you don't have the makeup brush or whatever, let's try it with just a regular dauber. Okay, oh, you know what, let's get my one with tans and browns on it. So if we take the same stencil, line it up, and actually I haven't taped it to the paper. You want the paper and the stencil connected. That's important. And let's go with some dark, what is this one, walnut stain. Okay, and dab it on. And this is a very small opening in this stencil. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Oh yeah, cool. So again, that's for a more subtle background. Pretty cool. So that's just on plain paper. But we can, one of my favorite things to do is to do ink stenciling on book pages. Now I found this book in German on at a thrift store. So that was a cool find for $1. Oh, and you can just take a stencil. Now I'm going to throw caution to the wind and see what happens if I just try to hold this on here. Oh, I just daubed in walnut. I didn't mean to do that, but oh well. I love this book in particular because it's not that old, but the pages have already started to yellow. Okay, let's look at that. Look how cool that is. I mean, it looks like a road map, like a map of streets. So if you're doing like a travel theme or a city theme or whatever, this is perfect. I mean, again, little bits of collage, perfect for an altered playing card, great for artist trading card backgrounds, everything. So that's on a book page. Let's do another one. Let's swap out. And I like this stencil too. And again, all these stencils came from Temu. They have some great stencils there. And then, so like with this one, it's the circle pattern. You can kind of fade it out if you just, wipe the stencil one way. All right, look how cool that is. Okay, so simple. Stencil and a stamper or the blending brush. Now, also you can dress up painted backgrounds. This is off of a gel plate. I just put turquoise on the gel plate and then hit it with bubble wrap and then a white piece of cardstock. So the white is actually coming through. But we can dress this up by adding some stencil to it. Let's just try this one again just to see. I'll go with black. And I didn't go over it twice, so it left it kind of gray. But look how nice that is. Just really cool. So simple. So simple. Now, I do want to try, what happens if we went in with almost the same color over it in this oxide ink? Because this is more opaque, so it won't, oh, it's a nice darker color. Let's see that. Oh. Cool. Look at that. Fantastic. So, I mean, even the difference between that and that is so cool because you're using opaque ink and then a translucent ink. And you can just do this with all kinds of papers. Again, this is actually construction paper, which what did I do with this one? Some white with a stencil on it. Actually, I think I used this stencil to pull this. And then that's just putting a blob of paint on and scraping it down with a piece of cardboard or a scraper if you have one. If you have a putty knife like that, you just put a blob of paint and then scrape it down. It's a really cool effect. But if we put this over it, where's my black? Okay. All right. And look at that. See, that would make some great backgrounds for altered playing cards. And if you use your viewfinder, that's really cool. You could just find some cool stuff. Even where it fades away is cool. Probably cut that line out. So you can play with that. And so here are my finished artist trading cards. I used all of our backgrounds. This one is the grid that I thought kind of looked like a map. Well, then I found this little picture of a city, which you can barely see now because I stamped over it with Paris. And then I put a little newspaper behind it. I thought, oh, it's like a newspaper thing. I got a typewriter. I stamped Paris in that little blank place. And then I thought maybe it's an award. And so I added this ribbon and the seal. And I actually dyed this ribbon with stamp pads. It's the same ribbon here. It's Sari silk ribbon, which is one of my favorite things. It's so cool, and it comes in a bunch of colors. You can get it through Amazon. I use it on tons of stuff. But anyway, I just taped off the ribbon and pressed it against my stamp pads to get me a blue, white, and red French ribbon. So my little Paris thing. And then this is very simple. This is the writing background. I put a couple of layers of the netting, the creepy cloth, and then a picture. That's a Tim Holtz picture. All I did was edge it with some vintage and black. The same writing, sort of a Simic writing, looked kind of religious to me, so I found a religious stamp, and I found this great key with, I think that's St. Christopher on it, and then I tied it with the twine. And again, this twine was just regular, that was this twine. I just trapped it under my little, what do you call it? I trapped it under my little blender on the stamp pad and just pulled it through a couple times to dye it red, so it picks up that red color right there. And I just stitched it through and tied the key on, added a little gold accent on the edges, and I think it looks beautiful. And then these turned out so fun. That's obviously the polka dot over the German writing. And then I had these feathers that I actually cut down. They were about that long. I cut the feather down and just tied it on, hole punched, tied it on with the Sari silk ribbon. And I think that's beautiful. And the dots mimic the dots. And then when I was looking through my stamps, I saw this black bird with the red bits, and that reminded me of this piece of the stamping thing that was like the sunburst kind of thing. It was this piece. Here we go. That, okay? But I used the redder part. Anyway, so I just pulled that stamp out, darkened it, blackened the edges, put it on, and then I had a black feather that I also cut down and tied on with, again, the Sari silk ribbon. So I think that looks just really elegant. But again, it's all about tying those colors together. The black, the red, the cream, three colors, okay? And this was the center of the sunburst stencil. So I thought, oh, I'll put this fiery charm heart. And these I got on Temu. They're silver. I alcohol inked it with some brown and some black, and then I stitched it on. Can you see that? And I glued it to the card first, and then I used my awl to go through every hole and an outside hole, which made sewing a lot easier. Now I haven't put a backing on this yet, but and then I just tied some black Sari silk ribbon to the top, and I think that looks pretty cool. A nice little Valentine right there, huh? And then this is the simplest of all. I just found a nice picture of a rose, antiqued the corners. I antiqued some lace by just daubing, the blender with vintage ink on it, glued it down, and trimmed off the edges. And I went back and I aged over the edges of the cut edges of the lace, just so it blends in. And it's funny how this sunburst background now kind of looked like leopard, so I'm calling this leopard rose. Anyway, kind of fun. And then this one, I just, as I was sitting down to film, realized this is the one where I cut it in, let the seam between the peacock stamping and the black stamping of the same grid, I just let the seam be in the middle. And I didn't know why I was doing that, but now I do, because it's about land and sea. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I felt like this looked like a map to me. So then I was just thinking map, then the map, and then of course the color always evokes the sea. Again, when I was looking through for a good stamp, I found this stamp. I was like, that seems like, Florida or, whatever. And so I just kept building. And then I thought, well, it's a map. It's a map. What kind of map? Treasure map. And then I found this little map, which I just tore apart. And it was funny, I tore it into a rectangle, but I couldn't fit it on and not cover the spoonbill's head. So I tore that little part out and antiqued the edges. And then this was just a piece of this paper, which I got on Temu, but it's just plain different parchment papers. This was the map set I got. Anyway, I stamped some words on it, some script, if you can see that. And then antiqued it up, and I roughed it up on the edges, rolled it up, tied it with some dyed twine. I used this twine and ran it through the vintage stamp pad, against this vintage stamp pad, just to give it a little more age, and glued it on there, and it feels like, you know, a little Florida treasure map kind of thing. So all those inked stencil backgrounds inspired what came next. I started with the background and then I just built from there. Like even these two different ones, okay, I mean, it's the same background, but this one just somehow sort of felt religious, and this one somehow felt like a love note. So even on the picture, it's got some writing on there. So it's like she's written a love note to whomever she's sending it to. The dots just evoke the dots. This one's really color-based, but also the feathers kind of mimic that look. The streets of Paris became, you know, a newspaper kind of thing. And it always is just, you know, building on what do you have already. This one with the color came from the French flag. So everything was, you know, beiges and blacks, but then I add that burst of color, but the burst of color comes from the French flag. It wouldn't make sense if it was a yellow and green thing. And by the way, this isn't wax, this is red hot glue. So all these kind of fun things. And I think I'm gonna call this the scavenger series or the found series, because all of this stuff, I just went around my studio and opened jars and bins and looked like, what could be here? What could match with this? So, but I think it turned out really cool. You should ink some backgrounds through stencils, try it out and see what you come up with. From Funkin' Dazzles, this is Jstar saying, have a great day and keep creating.